Welcome, relational leaders and listeners. This is Cultivate, your podcast destination where we celebrate thriving relational leaders and encourage each other along the influence journey. I am Wendy F. Adams, your host and strategic guide. In each episode, I will engage with leaders who are sharing authentic stories that support impactful influence. I believe work shouldn't be a four-letter word, but should inspire, challenge, and fulfill. Through a high challenge and high support model, we will explore the recipe for relational leadership that drives meaningful change. You will gain insights from leaders who face the same challenges you may encounter and discover strategies to navigate them with resilience and purpose. Today's guest, Dr. Aaron Marshall, is a founder, philosopher, and father, guiding leaders who are ready to move from survival mode to meaningful impact. Through his work with Grounded and Growing, Aaron calls us into the deeper work, counterformation, clarity, and sustainable rhythms that nourish the soul and shape the culture. Fueled by empathy, collaboration, and a deep love for what is good, true, and beautiful, he invites us to build lives and organizations that are thick, authentic, resilient, and deeply human. This is a conversation for the leader who knows transformation starts within. If you're seeking healthy leadership engagement in an open, empowering, and authentic environment, then you're in the right place. After all, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together. Welcome to a fresh episode of Cultivate. Today, we have a transformative leader who's causing ripple effects in the world of leadership transformation. Aaron Marshall, principal with Grounded and Growing. Aaron, we're thrilled to have you join us the Cultivate experience today.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much, Wendy. I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Man, I know that we're going to have so much, not just great information from you, but fun, because we can do both, right? With that being said, there's a great buildup here. We've got people who are ready and excited to hear. Our time is going to fly. So we're going to jump in. Aaron, I've had the opportunity to be able to get in the green room in our time together a little bit about your story, right?
Yeah.
I want you to be able to share with the audience as we jump in your story behind your why. And how does that show up in your leadership?
Yeah. Well, what I'm really about are kind of two things: being on mission with people and this idea of counterformation, that like we're all living these lives that are rolling forward, and in our lives today it's noisy and it's distracting and it's really isolating, especially with our digital kind of connectedness that's not really all that connected, and we're being formed, and a lot of times being formed passively. And what gets me excited is connecting with folks and helping them sort of look at that a little bit and maybe back it up and say, I don't actually like the way I'm being formed. What does it look like to step back from that and be intentional? Because I want to actually end up over here. I had a chance to do a habits course a while back, and one of the things that caught people's attention or resonated was this notion that if your habits aren't getting you where you want to go, like change them. It seems so obvious, but anyway, so that's kind of my jam. I get super fired up about being on mission with people, and what I get to do through Grounded and Growing with clients is do that, jump in with them on their mission and kind of be about that. And getting in with companies like that allows me to hang out with people and kind of facilitate conversations that help them move to this place of formation.
I told you, like you're making the hard stuff sound fun right off the bat, because you stepped on my toes. Like you got all in my mix with my technology and how much, which we do. We need to
Yeah.
recognize how it's a tool. They're great tools, but how it can just be a slippery slope of that intentionality going away. But you just made it sound like we're going to have a good time while we do that, because I get to do this thing. I don't have to. All right. So we learn in the challenge. We all know that, right? We sometimes we want to run away from, but that's where really that growth happens. So let's just jump in.
Yeah.
Hardest leadership lesson that you have had to learn, and
Oh my gosh.
how did it reshape the way that you lead?
Yeah. Hardest lesson. And COVID was pretty rough.
Mm,
So a lot of lessons there. I think, um, transitioning from like a high school teacher and coach career to founding a nonprofit and then ending up as a leader in a nonprofit that had been established for a number of years. A lot of lessons in those transitions. But I actually want to point back to an exemplar that I had. My mom, she was sick for 25 years, and for whatever reason in that span, she decided she didn't want to look sick and show up sick, and she decided that because she wanted to serve, and she decided that the people she was going to serve were going to be the nurses and the doctors, and so every appointment, every pre-op, every surgery, every post-op recovery, like she was nails done, hair done, like wearing the nice
Oh
clothes,
my.
and she was just there to love on people. And I think watching her like make that intentional choice, I'm going to show up
Mm-hmm.
this way. It didn't reek of like toxic positivity, right? It was, I'm going to lean in to this opportunity I have, and I'm going to serve the people that I get to put, get put, excuse me, get put in front of,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to do it well. And I think like that's hard to shake, right? Like you see that lived out, and it changes you. So I think for me, that was the leadership lesson in transition. And I walked through it in my own way as a kid, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to walk through what she walked through. And to see her to kind of lean in that way was really powerful for me. So that's
Pro-
probably the biggest sort of
Look at
lesson
that.
learned.
Look at that. And how that's now translated into your adulthood, the way that you lead. Props to mamas, right? Like
Right?
that that's amazing. And to your point, again, you're leaning in with this stuff that we're like, oh, but was it you called it out right away. We can have toxic positivity.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? Like, no, 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 that really can happen. That's the
Mhm.
thing, and we have to be intentional not to be in that space. She's like, these folks have to. They're seeing it day in and day out. What a brave soul.
Oh my gosh. Totally.
And so you working with executives, there's like
Yeah.
at that point nothing that you can hear that can be an excuse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're caught between this tough space of vision and execution, right? And
Hmm.
they're like, well, this is where we want to be, but the steps to get there, and we can
Yeah.
hear all the reasons why it may not happen. What's the most common leadership trap that you see that
Ooh.
you're helping leaders break free from?
Yeah. I think the trap is kind of thinking you have to hold it all together.
Mm.
I have been playing around, and I'm not sure actually how to land this thing yet, but I've been playing around with this notion that actually we become free when we submit ourselves, right? And I know it's ridiculous, and it's very counter the way that we tend to think, but I think this notion of like genuinely letting go of who I'm trying to become, how I'm trying to please people, what I want people to see, that whole performative side, that is so heavy to carry, right? It's this big
Mm-hmm.
burden. But if there is a mentor or a guide or a set of principles or something transcendent that we can say, like, I'm going to submit to that because I think that's higher and truer than anything I can come up with, and I'm going to settle in to that surrender or submission to that thing, and that's going to be the thing that guides how I engage with folks and make decisions. That set of principles or transcendence or that guide that we're trying to aim toward. Um, that becomes this thing that we're then free to navigate within. And we do have freedom then because we're not carrying that weight. And I think like most leaders that I engage with, they're carrying a really heavy weight,
Yes.
and they
Yes.
don't know how to let it go, and they don't know how to make it lighter. And they're hoping that like productivity hacks or getting up early in the morning and doing 8 things or journaling more or meditating the right way or like all these things are going to somehow work. And I don't want to say those are bad things. Like I love all those things, but if they're just happening, then you're just striving and you're just running harder and you're putting more weight on the back. And that's not a solution that brings freedom and happiness and joy or collaboration and productivity and success. So
Absolutely. I mean, you again, simple in concept, not easy in execution. That's not what we're saying here, right? And that's what I'm hearing from you. Not only is that a heavy space for leaders, it can become very lonely. If you get this
absolutely.
glimpse and you're like, yeah, I really think if I could just let this go, it's not mine to carry.
Mm.
That's the way to go. But if you're not hearing that around you, if you don't
Yeah.
have a sphere that's speaking in, that's saying, yeah, that you're like, well, nope, no, that's crazy talk. So you just brought the crazy talk out. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
let's lean into, if it's not mine, then it's not mine.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the C word, which we love to throw around. collaboration, right?
Hmm.
Collaborative leadership, like that's the space to be where I
Mm.
don't have to know it all. You know what? I
Yeah.
don't know it
Yeah.
all. I can raise my hand and say, I need support in this space. I don't have the answer. Let's figure it out together.
Mhm.
How in the work that you're doing, grounded and growing and
Yeah.
those spaces, how do you transform a group of independent, high performing executives, right? Into what is really a cohesive C suite getting it done through the real challenges?
Yeah. Yeah, there are some really great sports analogies for that. Like I was a huge Lakers fan growing up, and
Come
I guess
on.
I still am. I just don't watch a ton of basketball anymore. But man, I used to love watching. They had like the '80s superstars, and
Come
and
on.
then I was like watching that early 2000s transition, and they had a year where they brought in like just these mega players from a bunch of teams. Like Karl Malone was a Laker. Like what? I did not see that coming, right? And that team, they had some good wins, but they really underperformed. And they had
Mm,
arguably the greatest coach in the history of the NBA pulling together a bunch of egos and getting them to play well together. And they did well enough to make the playoffs, but they didn't do well enough to win a championship, which, at least one team does every year. So like something there missed. And I think, in the corporate world, it's similar, right? We get all these high performers and we
mm,
train folks up that like, hey, the way to the top is confidence, it's presence, it's all these things that are really like individually us. Jim
yes.
Collins in Good to Great, he had this notion of a level 5 leader. And he said, it's this like undeniable passion for the mission of the organization and humility. And in that pairing, that's where we get to that level 5 leader status in his mind. And that's what he saw across these companies that he was looking at to say which ones are great and sustaining and which ones aren't.
Hmm.
Say what you will about the rest of what he did. I think a lot of gold there. Some people don't, but what he nailed there with this idea of a humble leader, leaning into a team and being passionate, like engaged and passionate about the mission of the organization. That's the key. And I think back to your question, that's the key for getting a group of executives to think similarly. And there's nothing shocking about this, right? This is a
Hmm.
long way of saying the answer anybody would probably give you. And that's, you got to have something shared. Like, what's the shared vision? What's the shared mental model? Where are we going to go together? How are we going to do it? Like, what are our agreements on how culture is going to look? What I think I find most teams get hung up on is they've already got an implicit culture and they
Yes.
don't always know how to articulate it. And so taking that implicit culture, figuring out how to articulate it, get it out on the table, and then critique it. Like, do we want to keep this? Do we not want to keep it? Are we all on the same page with this? And then let's make that explicit and create some kind of cultural artifact where we can actually live by it openly.
And you said something that just struck me. It really is being confident in, but holding loosely. Like we're not going to just bear down on to be able to put it on the table as a leadership team and say, is this really us? Or it is
Yeah.
us. Is this how we're really moving? Right? That's a lot of the conversation, even in the spaces that I'm in and the leaders that I'm working
Mm-hmm.
with. When we look at that mission and we line it up with our movement, are they actually
Mm-hmm.
aligned? And
Yeah.
being brave enough to actually ask that question, stick around for the answer. And that's what I'm hearing from you. Like that's what's going to, like, to your point, take us from good to great when we start
Mhm.
talking about being that liberating leader, right? And
Yeah.
speaking in and giving that empowerment to folks. Well, that's where it starts, is being able to actually speak in and be self-aware. Where am I as a leader before I speak into anyone else? I love the fact that you're digging into the
Mm.
deep end, because I think that we can get into those spaces where we're just checking the box. Yeah, got that. Yeah, yeah, went to that seminar. How is that now playing out in the way that you're actually walking things out as a leader? So
Yeah.
this takes us to this place of, okay, great. We got all this thrown out on the table. Pressure's on. So a leader who's under pressure,
Mm.
can you share a time when you had an opportunity to work with an organization, you were the leader in that organization, and with, it's a make or break moment. We got to make a decision because that's the big part of leadership, right? We can talk about it all. How did leadership determine where we were going to go with that outcome? Got to make a call. How do we
Mm.
move from it's on the table to we got to make a decision?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's so many conversations, right? Like, how are we going to move forward? How do we get like agreement? How do we build buy-in in this scenario, in that scenario? How do we already sort of know we want to go here. How do we get people on board with that? Um, I think with clients, sometimes I get invited in a little bit late in that
Mm,
scenario. And
mm-hmm.
so, the organization's made a little bit of progress towards a decision without sort of inviting in other voices. And then it is scary to hold it really loosely and hand it back because you feel like you've already got it ready to throw in the oven or maybe even already baking. And that can be very uncomfortable. Again, like I'm sure most leaders at companies through COVID
Mm,
experienced a bit of this, right? We
yeah,
had we
yeah.
had this sort of unexpected, unknown change, and here at the Santa Barbara Zoo, in one of my hats, it's we're hospitality, we're guest facing, we're an experience, and we're shut down. What does that look like, right? Everything changes overnight. I had a chance to work with one client who they're in an industry where you typically don't have partner agreement. Everyone works
Mm,
pretty independently, and that's okay within the industry. And they were trying to change things. They wanted to have like a more team approach, and that meant pulling in all the partners and trying to get on the same page. And that was several days of hard conversation and working through things. And um, it was naming like, who are we? How are we going to work? What are we trying to get at? What are the agreements we're going to make together? And doing that work to create what I call like a shared mental model about how this organization is going to move forward. It's not easy work, like you're saying, and
mm-hmm.
it really is just sitting in hard things and being okay with it. And you keep saying, hey, we're doing the deep stuff. We're doing, yeah, I love that space. Like you do too, right?
Yes.
We're comfortable in the deep end. Doesn't mean I'm not wearing floaties some of the time,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
Like I don't always want to be at the bottom of the water. We're moving up and down, but that's where the good work is happening. And if you can get folks on board and get through the performance or the artificial and get into like, well, what do we really want to be doing here? Um, Man, it's just people are amazing, and when they come together, they do incredible things. So yeah, you also you made a comment about how much we know, like just generally, we're like learning so much about leadership, and I think that is so true. And I find even in my own life, there's way more up here than like out in my hands happening, right? And so getting folks from theory to practice, theory to practice, theory to practice. How do we actually start doing all the things that we think are had a gentleman that reported to me for a long period of time, and he always knew the right answer, but we didn't see the right practice happening over and over. And it was
Wow.
that was a huge learning to figure out how do we close that gap, because you're going to be way more effective if you can close that gap.
Absolutely. And you're we don't step into that space and actually put the spotlight on. Like that's where we get hung up. We see
Yeah.
that. Now, how do you have that conversation with that guy who's like, but I'm saying the right things. I know
Yeah.
this. Yes. How do we go from here to here? And a leader who has shown high support is also going to be able to bring that high challenge, right?
Yeah.
And that's that challenging space. And now you've liberated that person. You really are not just speaking empowerment, you actually are empowering them to be able to
Yeah.
see that in themselves, calling them up into that space. I love when you said, we're in the deep end, the floaties are on, but not that we want to be down at the bottom, but hey, we're learning how to get from bottom to top. We are moving. Movement
Mhm.
is happening, right? And we're bringing each other along and bringing each other up in that space. I think that's what I love most about what we have and get the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
We talk about how that then plays out, and you mentioned something like it's already in the oven. We've already had this established culture, maybe that we're stepping into, and that's a deep end space. One of the things that I see, and I want to get your feedback on this: empathy and integrity, right?
Yeah.
Within a leadership space, sounds great on paper. We need to empathize. Our integrity needs to be high. Our non-negotiables.
Hmm.
And then we're in this high stakes, high pressure environment, hard decisions, heavy things got to be made. How do you uphold that
Yeah.
level as a non-negotiable in your space as a leader? What are those strategies for keeping your leadership grounded in those principles?
Yeah. Great question. I think, for me personally, it just is what has to be, right? And so I've got to go back, like I was talking before. What does it look like to be in service of that other thing,
Mm,
so that I'm
mm,
free to be true to that other thing? And that's a practice. Like I mess it up sometimes, right? And I think if I look back, I messed it up a lot more a few decades ago than I do today. I hope. I think
amen.
that's true. um, and we're growing and we're learning. And I think that just that little bit there becomes the lens to see it in other folks. So how do we, when we see a leader and we go, oh, that looks like a breach of what our
Mm,
expectations are for integrity or for empathy? How do I sort of step back from that sort of justice reaction and say, well, hold on, let me come to this by assuming positive intent. Let me ask some curious
mm,
questions. Let me dig in a little bit. And then if everything I assume is actually true and it is the sort of worst case scenario, how can I be gracious in that? How can I be charitable in the way that we approach that? How can I work toward reconciliation rather than like rejection? So I think like it becomes this really beautiful relational space if we can really have a true empathy lens. And integrity like means some different things to different people, but if we're talking about being true to who I say I'm going to be, like if it's
mm-hmm.
as simple as that, then we have to get to know people to know who they say they're going to be, right? We can't trust them to be the way I think they should be or the way that I think I should be, and then judge myself on my
Faith.
motives and my
Mm,
intentions, but not on my actions, and judge everybody else on their actions.
on their
Like this
actions.
becomes a really messy space. And so how like, and a lot of this boils down to being empathetic and wearing good lenses, or you could say to loving others well. Like, what does that look like?
And that's a
That's
very
my take anyway.
well, no, and I think you spoke that out so well. And the woven line through all of that was being so intentional. That doesn't happen
Mm-hmm.
accidentally, right? In that
No,
accidental space, we're not going to be curious. Oh gosh,
no.
I mean, anyone who knows me well, that is a place in space. Because
Mm,
I'm the first one to tell you, you show me who you are. You don't tell me who you are, right? And so that's a place that I've been called up in, and I have to own that. Take And this is my thing, especially where we are right now, where I am in my space, is
mm,
learning to really live in the pause. All
mm,
those things that you just shared. Okay, before I can ask that question and be so intentional, I gotta pause, because
mm,
I know what's popping in my head and the things that I'm thinking, and already got the lens. Let's pause. Okay,
mhm,
now I can ask that question. There may be a stepping away. We may have to come back to that after you respond to me. Okay, let me think on that. And let's come back acknowledging, but pausing before I just come back with, okay, this is what it is. That's from a leadership standpoint. That's from working shoulder to shoulder with teams. And then I think that really takes us to that place of how we can truly grow and transform, right?
mm,
I said it earlier, movement, mission. When they're misaligned, trouble. I mean, we are sitting and stuck at that point in time. So, like when you're thinking about this and putting together those strategic plans
mm,
for
mhm,
organizations you're leading, those that you are working as far as along in coaching, what are like primary first steps that you take
mm.
to diagnose and start to speak into that realignment space?
Yeah, yeah. Man, I think, step one is to listen,
Mm,
right? When whether it's your own organization or you're coming as an outsider, like you got to listen, and you got to start understanding what is going on with fresh eyes, and
yeah.
and learning about it and trying to figure out where the alignment is and where the misalignment is. When I think about process, we want to walk through this notion of awareness. We want to establish some rhythms. We want
Mm-hmm.
to embody what we're trying to do. And we want to be able to sort of embed that and then reflect back on it. And so creating this experiential learning cycle where we're kind of learning, adjusting, tweaking, reflecting. Like, how do we get into this mix? In a strategic planning process, you're going to have a pretty consistent process that you walk through. And I think some of the biggest pain points are generating buy-in. So what does it look like to engage the right stakeholders at the right time to make sure that people have a chance to speak in early to some of the foundations, make sure you're getting the right voices involved in that
Mm-hmm.
process. And, how's the board engaged? How's your leadership engaged?
Mm,
How's the rest of your staff engaged? all the way down to frontline staff. Can you foster this new look that says, hey, we're going somewhere and everybody's going to be on board and we're all going to be pumped about it because it reflects who we collectively are.
Yes.
That's big time, right? So yeah, I think that's kind of how I've attacked it with clients, and there's been a lot of fruit there, but it's not a process you want to rush because it's when you can get really wrong.
And that is detrimental.
Yeah.
It's coming back from that. I mean, you get that wrong, and we're really talking about steps back, right?
Mhm.
It's not, oh, let's just dust ourselves off. We go back to the pool. Now you feel like you are drowning, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, I'm out of here. I can't. And that is a place and a space that you said it, like, we can actually see each other in that space, right? We've now allowed ourselves to be vulnerable, where we,
Mhm.
as leaders, right, we're saying the things that where we've now become self-aware of. But then there are those things we just want to hold on to, right?
Mm.
It's not really me, those blind spots. So just curious, and I can't believe our time is moving like it is, and then we're almost done. That's amazing. Not good. How do you help executives actually recognize those leadership gaps? Like, what's one of those key ways to bring in that self-awareness for them so they can actually start to address it? I heard you earlier say, with kindness and grace.
Yeah.
How does that, what does that actually look like?
Yeah. Um, Well, so in a coaching context, we've got sort of two scenarios, and it looks a
Mhm.
little bit different. So if this is coaching through a company,
Yes.
then it's great. Like that's stronger. It's better for the employee because the company's going to foot the bill, and we're able to do a little bit more on the front end in terms of 360 analysis, getting input, having a clear sense from a supervisor. Hey, these are the places that we want to see this person grow, whether that's a board or a key leader that's supporting this person. And then you're able to set up a framework and say, hey, how do you see yourself? What's going on here? And then, hey, here's some of the feedback that we're getting about how you show up. It looks like maybe there's not a match between how you see yourself and how
Mm.
you're being felt by other people. So like, let's dig into that. How can we think about these areas? And I think, I would say early in my coaching, so 10, 12 years ago, I wanted to jump into that gap and help a person identify, here's some quick fixes that we can do, and it's going to make it all better. And there's great value in small wins. So I think there was a bit of good in that process. But one of the things that I've learned over time is there are other ways to get quick wins, but really settling in and sitting in the pain of a
Mm.
360, for instance, and trying to understand where miscommunication might be happening can really we learn a lot as we're humbled. And
We
if we
do.
can open up into that space and say, I really do want to become a better leader, and I do want to show up in a way that empowers and encourages people, because I think that's what's going to help me lead more effectively. Then we want to sit in that space. And so I was saying, we want to listen and name. I think the
Yes.
next step there for us is to prune and align. And then we want to design a way forward and start to walk it. And then we want to reflect back on that and figure out what's going to get embedded into our regular. So that process, I love that sort of fits that grounded and growing notion. But
Hmm.
this idea that, like, okay, we've listened and we're starting to name some things. Like, what do we need to get rid of? What's heavy right now? You can just take it out of the backpack. Let's be done with that. We don't need that. It's
Yeah.
not serving us well anymore. And let's get aligned with the things that we want to be about, so we can get
And
walking.
recognize recognize how that's us. When we do that, now we're exemplifying that for those that we are influencing. Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
end with us. The ripple effect, right, is game changing, truly,
Yeah.
for our teams. And like, there's nothing that we do that is just for us. When we think about leadership and the fact that it is influence, we talked about basketball earlier in our
Yeah.
conversation. I love my dear Sir Charles Barkley back in the day. He's like, I'm not a role model. I'm a basketball player. Dude, you're a
Yeah.
role model. The
Yeah.
question is, what type, right? And
Yeah.
so we're all out there in that influence space. I often say, and I put it out there to especially my emerging leader space that I get to speak into, and I enjoy it,
That's
is
fantastic.
the fact that each of us are supposed to be. We are intentioned to be in every space that we're in, every
Mm.
room that we're in. We are there for a purpose. I'll tell you, 90% of the time, if not 100% of the time, It's to learn. There is something there that I should be learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even as a leader, walking in with that intention and with that expectation, I'm here to learn. There's something I don't know. There's something I need to be better in. There's something that to your point, I may need to be
Yeah.
pruning. And what am I going to learn in this space? I love it. I do really. Today's conversation not only has put us in a place, in a space of putting, true spotlight on some things we really need to be talking about, but you've given some action items. And I
Mm-hmm.
I do I want to start to wind us up here with, because I know that our engagement, our audience wants to be able to, what can I do today with this? So if we were going to give them a challenge to take one bold action this week that would transform their leadership approach, what would you say that is?
Oh man, I would say, oof. This is going to be a shameless plug here, but if a person is feeling anxious, stressed out, distracted, worn out, I've got a freebie over at Grounded and Growing that is, it's called Resist Drift, and it's just this notion that, hey, sometimes we need to pause. Like we're in a river flowing and we don't
Mm-hmm.
even know it, so we just need to pause and acknowledge it, and we need to turn our body around, and we got to plant our feet, because it turns out a lot of times the current is not as deep as we think. And I think
Nice.
sometimes we're just flowing with it and we're like, there's nothing I can do. And the reality is we're sitting in, 8 inches of water,
Yeah.
and you just
Yeah.
got to stand up. And so it's kind of a three exercise, like, wake up, man. I don't have to be here. Right. And I love it because I use it. It's something that was shown to me a number of years ago, and I found it to be effective, and it's not a one and done. Like, I go back to it. I find myself in this place, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here scrolling TikTok at 10 o'clock at night. What am I doing? There's nothing enjoyable about this. And yet here I am, like, okay, I got to pause. Like, I'm drifting. I got to
Mm-hmm.
get out of this river. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like, to me, that's a super valuable resource. Um, I know
I
you've
love.
got some great stuff. Like, get a conversation with Wendy going. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, wake up. Like, let's reset some things. Like, I think it's about finding a guide. Like, who is where you want to be? Who understands stuff a little bit ahead of you? And how can you get in touch with them? If it's a friend, if it's a colleague, if it's someone in the community, if it's one of your parents' friends, like, give them a phone call, buy them coffee. It's a $5 experience, and just go, hey, what's life like for you? And hey, by the way, I'm struggling with this. You got anything you want to, like, any good questions for me? Any things I could be thinking about? So that would, there's like five
No,
things right there, but
no,
yeah, like,
and what it all says, we're not built to do this alone. Get out of the silo, right?
totally. Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
And there are enough of us out there who are saying, willing to get into the deep or
Yeah.
the 8 inches with you. Because I
Yeah.
love that. I love that picture that we've said to ourselves, oh, there's nothing that I can do. It's just taking me up. Stand up. They're really, it's not as
Yeah.
neither bad nor as deep as you think,
Mm.
but if you have allowed yourself to be in that space of, I'm the only one who can fix this, then yeah, it is going to be that overwhelming and the backpack's going to be that heavy.
Yeah.
Aaron, this has been fantastic. I mean, got to have you back.
Oh, I love
You've
that.
given us so much to be able to dig into. I want the audience to get just a little. We're gonna fire off some things right here at the end. First thing that comes to mind, for them to give a little more of a picture of Aaron. What's one workplace buzzword that you'd be thrilled if you never heard again?
I'm going to take the reverse of that. What I love hearing over and over are clarity and alignment. I want to hear them
Nice,
every day. I want to hear them out of
nice.
every mouth. Like, that is what we're about. Oh man, something that would drive me nuts would be, goodness. I mean, maybe collaboration, because
Mm,
it
because it's
sometimes has a
misused.
false ring. Yeah. Yeah, I want to figure out how we can do work together. But I don't know that collaboration always feels right.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. You're right. If it's misused, you're out. It grates. Like, nope,
Hmm.
that's not what it is. Okay,
Yeah.
fill in the blank. A thriving team always.
Mm, listens.
Mm, nice, nice. And this one's really important. Favorite ice cream flavor.
There is a place in Santa Barbara called Rory's that
Okay.
makes a mint and chip ice cream that tastes like mint leaf. It is unbelievable. I will stand by it forever.
Okay. All right.
That's the one.
All my Andy's Candies fans that are out there who like their mint and chocolate. Here we go. Like this is
Yeah.
sounds like the pure real deal. All right. Well, those
So,
are
yeah,
important things. Aaron,
yeah,
this
yeah.
has been such an engaging conversation. I love that you bring a bold flavor to like, hey, this is what it is. Let's talk about it. I always
Mm,
say the elephant doesn't get any smaller and then go away. So let's just
yeah.
go ahead and let's address it, and let's not address it alone. This conversation takes and gives us so much to think about. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, providing just a glimpse into what you're doing with Growing and Grounded and letting us know what's out there for us
Mm,
and what relational leadership in this journey can really look like for all of us, because it is intentional and
mm.
very individual, as far as what we all bring to the table. Your passion, your insights, truly energizing. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us.
Oh my gosh, Wendy, that's so kind. It just total honor for me to even be talking with you here. Like it's been great to get to know you and find out the mutual connections that we have, and just honored to have a chance to share with your audience. I hope there's a nugget there that they can hang on to, but and really just appreciate your leadership in this space. So thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Cultivate collaborators, we're wrapping things up today, but we each bring our own special flavor to the mix of relational leadership. So until next time, let's keep stirring things up, making an impact, and being better together. Thanks so much. Before we sign off today, I want to send out huge appreciation to our listeners for tuning in. I hope you felt seen, heard, and inspired to level up your own leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're ready to level up your leadership, asking for a friend, or interested in being a guest on the show, connect with me at cultivateforgood.com. That's cultivateforgood.com. Remember, as leaders, we're either driving progress or we're driving the problem. So let's grow together.